Hey Manav, welcome to your chart reading. You're the first one to let me make your video public, so yay! I know these videos can be really personal in nature, so I want to be sensitive to people's wants, especially in terms of privacy. So I never have an issue with someone not wanting their information plastered for everyone to see, but thank you for letting me. And I will respect it if you end up changing your mind, that's fine. Now, I know you ordered a Quickie birth chart reading, which are supposed to be 10 minutes long. But just a heads up, I'm so notorious about going way over on time. So I hope that's okay with you. I honestly don't know why I even bothered to list the approximate times in the Google form. But anyway, thank you so much for trusting me to do this for you and just being so sweet to interact with. I had a lot of fun diving into your chart. There's so much here. Before I start your official reading, in first glancing at your chart, I absolutely love that your moon is on your midheaven and you're a yoga teacher. You absolutely love what you provide to the world in terms of what you do for a living, which is all 10th house and midheaven energy. Your chart is also a lunar bucket. I don't know if you knew that, but mine is also a lunar bucket as well. This just means the shape of your chart has your moon on one side and a heavy accumulation of everything else on the other side. So it creates a picture of a bucket with a handle, the moon being that handle. And this can cause some turmoil in terms of your moon, your habitual emotional nature, feeling like it's stacked against all of the other things in your life. Of course, the meanings of each planet on the opposite end of your moon has its own dense meaning, but a lunar bucket person can sometimes feel like it's your whole life. Everything is coming against your emotions, like a push and pull energy. It can feel like things attack your emotional nature, take advantage of you emotionally, or this could even pronounce as emotional immaturity sometimes. The moon rules the 4th house of Cancer, and it represents everything that you see listed here. This isn't an all-inclusive list, but it gets the job done. I also noticed that in first glance, your moon squares your Venus. Now, I don't know how deep your astrology knowledge goes, so I'll try to keep it short and concise, but I don't want to confuse you or overload you or patronize you. So just let me know if anything I say gets confusing or needs further explanation. So yeah, all of this lunar energy is coming into a hard aspect with your Venus. And Venus rules the 2nd house of Taurus and the 7th house of Libra. And it represents everything you see listed here. Again, not an all-inclusive list, but you get the idea. You can pause the video to read through this if you'd like. So Venus mainly being creature comforts, how we give and receive love, relationships, how we attract things and people that we value and like into our lives, the 5 senses, all of that Taurus, lovely Taurus and Libra energy, what and whom we value, respectively. All of this energy is coming into a hard aspect with the deep, innermost, tender, and vulnerable part of you, which is your moon. Everything we just went over. You know, your moon is where you need that tender love and gentleness from other people. This hard aspect can cause lasting dissatisfaction and discontentment. You can almost find yourself acting out like your mother or the original nurturer that was in your life would react. There may be a guilt of being more loyal to the parents' feelings and wants than maybe your own personal feelings and wants, and your moon feels like it's never getting fully understood or nurtured the way it so desperately needs, and your Venus feels like it's never getting fully satisfied or getting what it really wants. You may be a bit picky, like leaving relationships for little or maybe even petty reasons you deeply want, and even may have like a guttural hunger for things of Venus: love, attention, connectedness, devotion, acceptance, a mutual soul healer. So you're certainly no stranger to settling for less than what you deserve. As a Leo moon myself, I know how important attention and affection and enthusiasm are in terms of you feeling emotionally satisfied. And Venus coming into a hard aspect here, you may find it hard to discern who's being sincere towards you, who has positive motivations versus who wants to use you and take advantage of you. You have this, again, another area of push-pull energy of being unhappy when you're not in a relationship, so you get into one, and then you find yourself unhappy for whatever reason when you're in a relationship. So you find it really hard to be comfortable with just being comfortable. Sometimes this hard aspect can indicate that happiness creates insecurity in you. My word here is that you may find a lot of value in really sitting with yourself and finding what it means to you to feel satisfied, to feel like your belly is full, your heart is at rest, because you've gotten so familiar with dissatisfaction and lack that you may need to refresh yourself on what it is that you're seeking. What kind of security do you most need and want? Venus being physical, sensual security that we want, and then Moon being emotional security and safety that we need. So you're also a Pisces sun, which is ruled by Neptune, right? The foggy, dreamy, unrealistic kind of naive planet. It can be hard for you to see the evil in people. Pisces is a little tiny bit of every sign of the zodiac. It comes last of the 12 for a reason. Neptune loves and seeks out freedom, which is naturally a Piscean trait. I mean, obviously, Neptune rules Pisces. And Pisces use this to think outside of the box. Like, oh, maybe, so-and-so isn't a bad guy. Maybe he has a reason. But, sometimes a bad guy is just a plain old bad guy. So you also have Pluto in your first house, which, without getting too far into that one, that can indicate a really big blind spot in first house things, which is the house of self, how we immediately interact with the world around us, that first impression, things of that nature, Aries and Martian things. And Pluto can darken what it touches in the chart. I don't see it as an evil like a lot of people do. I think it's just a misunderstood energy. It breaks down to build back up again. And having Pluto in the first house can indicate that your life involves a series of major transformations and renewals, rebirths, if you will. Pluto is a tough planet, but it's so useful. I guess I went on a little tangent there. But like I was saying at first glance, I also saw that your sun is in your fifth house. Without diving too deep into possible contraindications with this one, you are just a bundle of fun and bright energy. I would be willing to bet that you can be very romantic too. The sun rules the fifth house of Leo, so your sun is exactly where it wants to be on your chart. This is where it shines the brightest. It's in its native house. The sun represents everything that you see here. It's our ego and how we show our personality. Wherever it is on your chart is where you like to shine the brightest. And in this case, like I said, the things of the fifth house, that's where you like to shine the brightest. And the fifth house is the house of romance, love, creativity, children, hobbies, joy, fun and games, risk, performance, drama, attention that you give and receive. So as you can see, this is all Leo, big Leo stuff. And finally, I noticed that you have Jupiter in your seventh house. And even though it's on the cusp, I'm personally not a big proponent of cusp astrology. There is some truth to mixing of energies coming together along the hard lines of the chart, but I don't believe in coincidences. The degrees, signs, angles, and everything is exactly how it's supposed to be, how it was meant to be on each person's chart. So that's kind of the mindset that I'm coming from in looking at all that you've got going on here. And wherever Jupiter falls on the chart, it expands everything it touches. So Jupiter rules the ninth house of Sagittarius, and it was the original ruler of the 12th house of Pisces as well. So it still partially rules there. Jupiter represents everything you see here: your luck, fortune, philosophy, abundance, expansiveness, and so on. So when looking for a soulmate, we really like to look at synastry and composite charts, which are relationship charts between two people. The synastry chart speaks to how two people get along day to day, not necessarily just romantic relationships. It could be any type of relationship. And then the composite chart is more of a long-term partnership reading, wherein it speaks to the relationship as a whole, what it looks like when you both come together halfway, and the ultimate destiny or purpose of your relationship together. That's the composite chart energy. It's literally a singular natal chart that takes all of the midpoints between your birth chart and a partner's birth chart, and it makes a whole separate chart with this data. so a third individual chart. So, like if your relationship was a living, breathing human being, the composite chart would be its natal chart. Hopefully that makes sense. So in just looking at your birth chart alone and not your chart in relation to someone else's, in astrology, we typically say that men need to look at their moons in their charts and women look to Jupiter. Jupiter represents the husband, someone the wife can look to for advice and expansive thinking, someone that will be a support and an encouragement and to bring abundance into her life. But for men, the moon provides comfort, emotional security, nurture, and support. Like Eminem says, every man grows up to marry his own mother. And seeing as how the moon is all about our relationships with our moms, there's a lot of truth there. So we also look at the 7th house because the 7th house opposes the 1st house in everyone's natal charts. And that just speaks to finding someone that's like a puzzle piece to you that fits right together with you. It's not the same as you, but it fits you in all the right ways. And the North Node we look at, of course, because it can indicate destiny energy. We look at a few other things as well, but to keep this video a reasonable length, I'll leave those for another time. Reading a natal chart is just so complex. We could just keep going deeper and deeper and still have so much to cover. But these are some of the main focal points. So for the moon, we look at the sign and house that the moon is in, and the sign and planet that rule that house. So for example, your Leo moon is in the 10th house, which is originally ruled by Capricorn and Saturn. We do the same thing for the 7th house and the North Node. Your 7th house ruler is Aries, which rules the 1st house with Mars. So you also have a planet in your 7th house, which is Jupiter, and Jupiter rules the 9th house of Sagittarius and co-rules the 12th house of Pisces, like we went over earlier. And then finally, your North Node is in Pisces in the 5th house. Now, Pisces is 12th house energy, and 5th house is Leo and Sun energy. Bleh, that's such a mouthful, isn't it? So when we take these things into consideration, we look for themes among what's revealed. So I made this little chart in Excel to show the patterns in what I see for you. So as you can see, your ideal person is probably going to be pretty fiery. They have a decent amount of Leo and Aries energy and a healthy mixture in there of Jupiter with a touch of Saturn. Now, this is going to be someone that is probably wildly gregarious and friendly, warm and inviting, but probably a little stubborn, probably a little stuck in their ways, sometimes dramatic, because remember, this is fixed Leo energy here. 5th house energy. So it'll be someone who's loving, romantic, willful, expresses herself or himself, whatever you're into, vivacious, proud, and kind, someone who's loyal above all else, someone you can actually be happy with without it causing that nagging disappointment and insecurity in you. Leo has a kind of weird conundrum about them. They want attention, but they also want an equal amount of freedom. And it's really hard to find someone that fits, that understands that. So that is the challenge presented to you. So, and with Jupiter, your ideal mate is someone who likes a good philosophy discussion, but doesn't take it too seriously. Someone who could stand on their own ideals, but not shove them down other people's throats. Now, this sounds like a tall order, but I'm one of those people that believes that if you have that yearning desire in your heart for a mate, that yearning isn't there by mistake. You're meant to have one. Now, Jupiter is in your 7th house, and this indicates that you have a lot of wisdom to share in a one-on-one connection. You have an overarching worldview within long-term relationships that oozes a lot of optimism, and you probably have really lighthearted and cheerful interactions with others, exchanging wisdom through connections. Jupiter is also luck and fortune because it's an outer planet. It's not a personal planet, so it's things that are out of our control, our direct control, I should say. Jupiter 7th house people also can experience a plethora of long-term relationships throughout their lives and luck within those long-term relationships. Now, this may change depending on the aspects, but I unfortunately don't have enough time to dive into those for you today. But in general, this is essentially what I'm seeing here. Jupiter in and of itself is just optimism and feeling good about the future and in your case, long-term relationships. But then when we pass past Jupiter and then we head on to Saturn is what takes that confident excitement, those optimistic ideals, and it uses discipline and structure to turn that into something concrete that you can actually build upon. You know, Capricorn is a cadence sign being in the 10th house, meaning it supports the third quadrant of the wheel. And being a cadence sign and a cadent house, it's all about starting work projects. It supports, like I said, that third quadrant, so it's got to be strong. So take that lucky Jupiter 7th house and put in some hard work, which I know you're equipped for because you are a Capricorn Mars, my friend, just like me. And we are some of the hardest workers known to man. So we need Saturn energy to help refine those big deals and possibilities that we develop with our Jupiter, or else they'll just stay theoretical, never passing into the physical or tangible. Now, Jupiter in Aries views the world through the qualities and the lens of Aries, so keep that in mind too. It's good to get a general idea of the archetypes for each sign, so when you study your chart, you can see correlations and insights about what's going on with each sign as it relates to you. But just a side note on that, Jupiter and Saturn trine each other in your chart as well. So you've got the potential to put in that work. You just need to have more faith in yourself and trust in the process. As cheesy as it sounds, don't rush it. I wish I could dive into your ascendant aspects because I noticed that you've got some pretty significant hard aspects to it, and that can alter things significantly for you in a lot of ways. So you might find a lot of use and wisdom in learning a little bit more about that. And let me know if I can help guide you or if you would like an ascendant reading because I can do that as well. So now that we've gone over Jupiter in your 7th house, let's talk about your 7th house ruler, which is Mars. Now, Mars rules the 1st house of Aries, and it co-rules with Pluto, the 8th house of Scorpio. Pluto wasn't introduced into our solar system until like the 1930s, so Mars is Scorpio's old school ruler, if you will. And Mars represents everything that you see listed here. It's our confrontation, what we want to be appreciated for, how we fight to get what we want. It's the warrior within us all, our impulsivity. You can pause the video here if you'd like to read through. So now that we know what planet rules your 7th, we look at where it is on your chart and what's going on with it there, what interactions and aspects it's having with other things in your chart. So your Mars is in your 3rd house of your mind, how you think and process information, basic communication, early learning, your neighborhood, your sense of humor, how you study, short distance travel, and so on. Things of Mercury, because like we've mentioned briefly, Mercury rules this house originally because it's the house of Gemini. So your Mars is aspected okay in your chart, but the one thing I would watch out for is that Mars-Saturn conjunction. Now, Mars, it's the warrior in us, right? So it's kind of fighting for control with Saturn. Some astrologers label this as an indicator of varying levels of cruelty, being controlling, seeking power, and it usually stems from the childhood habits that were learned. Maybe being able to kind of get what you wanted, throw your weight around a little bit. Things for you had to be just right. So you probably saw one of your parents as being really powerful, and you were quite intrigued, and you realized that in order to succeed and survive and become that powerful, you needed to emulate that in your own life as you grew up, and it comes from like a basic survival kind of that's where the motivations come from. So usually that desperate feeling of needing power can be rooted in a deep feeling of insecurity.